Hello and welcome to Masala Musings with me, Kari Badsha. You're listening to my show on the Single to Shadi podcast network, where I have a story for almost everything around being independent, being single, dating, and just living my best life. If you like what I'm talking about, please follow us on all major platforms and leave a 5-star rating. Around the time I graduated college, around 23 years old, my mom told me I was entering a Shani dosha, which meant for the next 7 years or so, my life was going to be full of challenges. I didn't believe any of that. I told her, people go through ups and downs. I'll be fine. A few years later, I felt all the difficulties and was convinced that it was just Shani or Saturn, if you don't know, because it's also easier to blame planets than blame myself. Like, I can't blame myself for every single thing going on wrong, especially things that were not my fault or not within my control. My mom kept telling me to say prayers or play Hanuman Chalisa, etc. You know how it is.
Mhm.
Which I wouldn't, till my therapist one day said, well, if you believe in the like Western astrology or like hearing my Capricorn horoscope and all that stuff, what will it hurt to play or listen to these things that my mom is suggesting? So she had a valid point, and I started doing that. My dating life felt like a joke, and it doesn't help when everyone around you asks, why or how are you still single? You're amazing. I'm so sure you get married quickly. And other than for hooking up, I was not landing any relationship ready guy. I tried playing coy. I tried being upfront. I tried messaging first. I tried waiting for him to message first. None of it was working. And there is just no way I am that undesirable. Like, clearly, if I could get someone to hook up, like, I'm desirable enough. But, like, why can't I land, like, the guy that is willing to be in a serious relationship with me? So, enter Vedic astrology. Single to Shadi actually had a workshop around Vedic astrology, and that entered my life exactly around the time a casual relationship ended. And I was feeling really grateful that like a job aligned with my career desires. It was all like, it felt like a reason to believe in divine timing. I listened to everything that Julie Taparia had to say about Vedic astrology and our timelines. So with that, of course, when I started thinking about astrology, I had to bring Julie onto the podcast to talk more about Vedic astrology and predetermined timelines and everything, this environment, this world that we live in. So welcome officially, Julie. I am so excited to have you.
No, thank you so much. It's awesome that you are a believer in this, and I think it's amazing that you're trying to push this message out there. I think that, having it was a joke like 30 years ago talking about Vedic astrology, like, ooh, what? That's like all voodoo. But now it's actually becoming a little bit more of the mainstream, and it's awesome to see, people like us that are talking about it openly. So I think it's really cool that you're doing this in a really vocal way, talking about your experiences. And yes, this is life. I mean, and yes, you were talking about Saturn. Saturn, think about Saturn. What is Saturn? To learn about Vedic astrology, it's really important for you to understand what the planets are. So if
Yeah.
I quiz you on what Saturn is, it's far away from the sun. It's a big planet. It's huge. It's very windy. There's lots of rings, right? There's lots of moons. What's a dark planet? Because it's so far away from the sun. And when it's dark and when it's not sunny, that's like there's no light. There's no light. There's no energy, right? Like when it's dark, there's no energy. And when there's no light, you get depressed, you feel down, you feel dark, and these are real. This is real Saturn. So when people say they're running a shani time period, which is Saturn in Hindi, basically you're kind of getting affected by the planet Saturn, and
Yeah.
everyone does. And the reason why, you might have it, at 21 and I might have it at 40 or someone else has it at 60, it's always going to happen. Times change like everything else. Like you don't
Yes.
last, it doesn't last forever, but it does hit you hard because everyone wants to be happy and happy, happy, happy. But life is not like that.
There's no happy without sad though, and that's what I try to
No,
tell people. Like,
exactly.
even like, okay, times are tough, yes, but like that just makes me appreciate the good times all the more because I'll be like, remember when things were tough and now things are going really good and I feel very, lucky or blessed or is your adjective here?
Kind of practical is the way to go. And Shani, it makes you just work. It makes you work hard. It makes you have anxiety. Like you know, when you're breathing in the cold weather, you're breathing really fast, right? Like you have
Yes.
anxiety. So it makes you kind of feel like you have anxiety. So how do you fix that? How do you fix the Saturn in your life? Now,
Can
it's a
you?
big
Oh my God, are you
question.
going to
Yes,
tell us that
of
answer?
course you can. You have to work with the planet. Well, you have to work with Saturn. You say, you know what, Saturn, I bow down to you. I will do what you say because planets are bigger than us. Like they have more control.
Yeah, you can't
And
really fight them.
you can't fight them, but what you could do is that if Saturn wants you to work, which or gives you anxiety, then you work more. You put in all your energy at work. You become serious. You become
Yeah.
like practical. Because if you become like, very dreamy during Saturn periods, Saturn's like, I'm a cold, dirty planet. I have wind around me. Like, I'm going to go and teach you that. This is the reality of life. Like, reality
Yeah.
of life is that you're not going to get everything and you're gonna have to work for it. And
You're not going
when,
to get everything you want. It's not going to be presented on a silver platter. And like,
right,
it's going to involve work. You can't
it,
just sit around and wait for it to happen. Like, you're going to have to do something for it. And I think that's another great thing about astrology as well, is that it's not just that, like, it's not just that this is the time of good or this is the time of bad or whatever. It's that, like, you're going to enter this time period, but like, what are you going to do about it?
you have to own
Like,
it.
are you gonna just sit there and take it? Are you gonna fight, like, not fight back, but like, what are you gonna do about it? Are you gonna work hard? Are you gonna just sit there? Are you gonna dream? Are you gonna, and that was, I even asked, I told my mom, I was like, so I'm not gonna accomplish it because it was like, I don't know if this applies every time to everyone, but she told me that my shani dosha was happening for 7 years or 7.5 years, something like that.
Yeah. Well, that's a sunny, shunny time period.
Does the 7 year time period apply every time? Because I know my mom told me about 7 years. And I was like, so I'm not going to accomplish anything in 7 years? And she was like, no, it's not that. You're just going to have to work twice as hard to accomplish things. It's just going to feel like
Yeah.
a hassle every time you want to get something done.
Well, this is interesting. So you're bringing up like two separate Saturn issues. So there's Saturn Dasha, which is a time period that everyone goes through, and just makes you work. And the end of the Saturn period, and also the end of the 7.5 year period, the ending kind of gives you a reward. Like if you work really hard, it kind of gives you the fruits of your labor. So it's kind of the same thing. Now, the 7.5 year period is called Sadasati. And Sadasati it's a transit in the sky. So up in the sky, when Saturn is rotating in the zodiac, every 2.5 years, it moves one zodiac. So there's 12 zodiac signs, right? So it takes 2.5 years to move to one zodiac. So it's a big planet on top of one zodiac sign. And it takes 30 years to go around the whole zodiac. So if you just think about it, like the math. So basically, the 7.5 year period is when Saturn is kind of around your moon. Now, why is it
Uh,
important? Why is it important that's around your natal moon? Like the moon that, you were born, the day and time that you were born, the moon was bright or not bright or dark or half moon or 1/4 moon.
yeah,
That
I think I had like
moon,
the sliver. I don't know if it's a
oh, the
wax or a
sliver.
wane, but it was like a
Okay.
sliver of a moon. That's why I looked
Yeah.
it up.
Oh, nice. And that's also a whole other topic. But when the Saturn is on top of your natal moon, let's say your natal moon's in Sagittarius, then finally Saturn in the sky comes to Sagittarius after 30 years of,
Going
starts
around to all the other.
impacting your moon. Now, what is your moon? It's the basic concept of Vedic astrology. And the moon is your mind. It's a manas. Manas means mind in Sanskrit. And if you look at the moon affects you, like you know that because we look at the high tides and low tides
Yeah.
of our oceans and of our waters. Like, the full moon, people kind of talk about like, ooh, the full moon is out. Like everyone's looking at the moon. There was a
Yeah.
movie
Moon
back in the
energy.
yeah, there's,
Yeah.
solar eclipses and lunar eclipses. So we are really kind of like having a big relationship with the moon and we don't realize it. So when
Yeah.
Saturn, the big heavy planet that's dark and windy and like far away from the sun, is transiting into Sagittarius, it's over your moon for 2.5 years. Now, what does that mean? It's a lot of heavy energy on your mind.
Yeah.
And that is why it's called Sarasati. It's 7.5 years. It's kind of before the moon, it's on the moon, and after the moon. And it's very distinct. Different things happen for different reasons around the moon. And the whole point of that is when it's over, your life is totally different. You have a new circle and maybe a new job, like your whole life,
Wow.
the whole
Yeah.
like mentality of yours is unrecognizable from before Sadasati to after Sadasati. So it's
Okay.
fabulous. And it's a fabulous time because it makes you really learn the realities of life.
Yes, that's what a lot of people kept saying to me is because I would have like another it would be like the same song and dance. I'd be like, oh, I lost my job or like whatever,
Mm-hmm.
insert difficulty here. And people are like,
Mm-hmm.
what is with your life? Like you're like I had a lot of people in my circle just be like, you are the only person that I know that struggles this much. Like I feel like you can't catch a break. And I'm like, oh, trust me, I feel that.
No,
I
I
know I
know.
can't catch a break and I don't know what's going on. And I know, so it started around 23 for me. And so 7 years or 7.5 years
Mm-hmm.
means roughly around 30, 31. I turned 30 around COVID times in 2021 to be more specific. But I know the following year, apparently, according to whatever astrologist or that my mom,
Mm-hmm.
like spoke to,
Yeah, of course.
he said like, oh, like everything's going to be better for
It's
me.
done.
And I was like, fantastic. I'm looking forward to 2022. Well, I lost my job yet again. And
Okay.
then also that led me towards depression, like such a deep depression where I was just like, I don't remember a joyful life anymore. Like I don't remember peace and contentment just coasting. Like I feel like everything's always been
Mm-hmm.
anxiety or hardship
Mm-hmm.
or like always having to figure out the next freaking thing.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I was just so depressed by it. And I was just like, I don't know what to do. I don't remember like
Who you
I
are.
can't find like I can't find like
Yeah, you can't find
this was the
yourself.
last time I just felt like content for like multiple weeks or multiple months where I was just like, no news is good news kind of
I
thing. Like,
know.
yeah, I'm just
Yeah.
living. And so that is what made me start listening to us, like, like my horoscope, my Western horoscope, like
But you're
Capricorn daily horoscope
but
things. And
this
then
is
I got a
amazing.
therapist.
This is completely amazing. You know what you just said? You know, in Vedic astrology, it says the more you suffer, the closer you want to go towards God and divinity. And the ultimate goal is to go towards divinity and to go towards the ultimate source because it wants you to learn that none of this stuff externally and materially is going to make you happy. It's going to make you miserable. But what is always constant is the divine. And so when people
Wow.
suffer,
Yeah.
you're not suffering for just no reason. You're suffering because you want to get closer to your ultimate true self. And it's a big topic. Karma is a
Yeah,
big
like when people
topic.
suffer, they're like, please God help me, or like whatever
Yeah,
being
right,
that is the universe, like
right.
someone
The
like,
light. Yeah.
yeah.
But either it's true because like we all look, half the planet, if you look at all the planets in the sky, like Mercury, Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Moon, Sun, Venus, but there's also shadow planets called Ketu and Rahu. But half of those planets are kind of not benefic, like beneficial. So half of the planets in in your lifetime that everyone goes through will make you suffer to some extent. And half the planets will be positive and make you go through good things. Now, what's the point of life? This is a big question, but in the eyes of Vedic astrology and Hinduism is that you reap the rewards of your past deeds, which is your
Yes.
past life karmas, and you're
Yeah.
here to grow and overcome your weaknesses and overcoming your weaknesses. Now, it might take 10, 15 years, but that
Yeah.
doesn't mean it's going to last forever. And I've seen
Only
people
constant is change.
yeah, and I've seen people with charts that show lots of difficulty, and most of the difficulty happens in the first half of life. And then, planets kind of move down, they kind of calm down because they say, hey, we beat you already in the ass, and we're going to now give you some reward because you learn these lessons. But everyone you show it. People don't show the true nature of what they're going through. You're
Thank
honest,
you.
you're open, right? Like you're showing this is life, this is
Yeah.
reality, right?
I
And that's really nice. That's
yeah,
very,
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
no,
off.
it's
I
very
often tell
good.
people that like I don't want to shy away from talking about the struggles
Hmm. It's who
because I
you
think
are.
that's because I think society, like,
Hmm.
especially South Asian society, right?
Of
Like it's
course.
like, oh, don't
Hiding
talk about your
everything.
depression, don't talk about
Yeah.
yeah. Like,
Like
don't talk
hide,
about
hide,
therapy.
hide. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so, but I'm like, no, like, what goes up must come down and vice versa. Like there's no happy, like we all know these things.
Hmm.
And it's not that I talk about it to get the pity and I try to make that clear to people. Like, I'm not talking about it for people to be like, oh my God, you poor thing. Like, no, I'm just talking about it as like, I am where I am today because I went through that.
Right.
It was complicated. I'm glad I was able to recognize it.
Hmm.
And I did have some friends who were like, I'm afraid for you. And I was like, that's valid. It's very valid. I was having some thoughts that
Yeah.
were like unkind and I didn't want
You
them.
don't want them, right?
Yeah. And so
Yeah.
I was
No
like, I'm
one wants
confused.
them.
Yeah, because I was like, I don't want to, like, I had suicidal ideations, but I was like, I don't want to do that.
Yeah,
So
of
I don't
course.
understand why that's running through my brain. And that's where I got help. And then that's also, as you're saying, like, I have gone closer and closer to divinity in the sense of like, okay, well, whatever will give me an answer, whatever will calm my
Right.
mind or my nerves. And I don't consider myself necessarily super religious,
But I
but
think you have a lot of divinity, and divinity keeps you going. And I think I looked at your chart, and you have the most fabulous divine planet, Jupiter. It's
oh,
exalted. So Jupiter's my
thank you.
favorite planet, and you have the highest form of it. So people with you, people like you could tell because they're open, they're honest, they're forthcoming, they're truth seekers, they're divine seekers. It's like
I
they are
love
looking.
that.
They're looking for answers that make sense to make sense of life, right? And it
Yes.
looks like you are just trying to look and figure out what the hell is going on in my life. But at least you're trying. People don't try. Sometimes they go down the other path and they're doing all sorts of crazy stuff to their mind and their body and their health.
Mm,
And that's kind of destructive, right? But you're taking the other approach and you're like, you know what? I just want to like figure my shit out, figure out what's going on in my life, making some sort of sense out of it. And this will help you overcome the next hurdle in your life. And I'm not saying life is, life will get better and it has gotten better because you're doing these things, but
yeah.
it will continue to get better. And when you have to go through a struggle again, you'll be like, oh, wait, I remember that Sadasati period, the 7.5 year period. And I went through those
Yes.
struggles every day, but now this is nothing compared to what I went through.
Yes. Yes.
Those
Exact.
will,
Yeah. Exactly
that's,
that.
that's, that's growth. This is, you overcome your own self and you're going to be like a stronger and better person. And yeah, this is all cliche at some level, but it's
Yes.
also just the real truth. Now, like
Yeah.
when
I
I
tell
have
people, I'm like,
seen,
if you're not going to believe it, you're not going to believe it. Like, that's fine. Like, you need to,
yeah,
everyone has to have their own kind of awakening or calling to it,
exactly.
just
But
like I did.
I actually think it's amazing for one reason to go through hardship earlier because then then all the like heavy karma gets
You're
out.
wiser sooner.
Yeah, and you're wiser sooner. You don't, and then you live your life with this like knowledge base that makes you live life in a better way. Like you don't want to learn these things when you're 80 years old. You're like, oh,
No.
you
Yeah.
know, like
Yeah.
why do
I,
you know?
now I'm finally in a place where I'm like, you know what? This is going to suck for a while, but
Yeah,
everything's going to be okay at some point. And now I can actually truly believe that. I mean, it's hard in some, at some points I'm just kind of like, oh, like I'm so like, what's the word? Hardwired to just always like worry and all. I think we
I
all
know.
kind of have
I
that,
know.
natural,
Right.
like, oh my God, but what if this and the logic of this and that. But I'm like, I'm finally in a place where I'm like, I even wrote down over the past like 10 years, what are all the things that I wanted to happen that didn't happen? Like I wanted it to go this way and it did not go that way. But what was the
And that's
outcome of it? And the
yeah.
outcome of it was actually, well, this was the outcome, which led to this other thing, which was pretty cool, and which led to this other thing that was pretty cool. So had I not had this happen the way that I wanted it to, none of this other stuff that was really cool would have
Hmm.
happened. My life would have gone in a different direction, and I don't know what that is.
Hmm.
Oh,
But
I can't
I'll
wait
tell
till
you
I'm thinking
something.
about like what if I went in that direction? Because at the end of the day, I didn't. And I went in this direction and these are the things that came out of it. So I'm like, what's the lesson here? The lesson is that like everything ends up okay if you
Of
just like
course.
would stop worrying for a second.
Yeah. But what's really amazing? And I think a lot of people struggle. I struggled. A lot of people struggle with why aren't things not going the way it should go in society? And it's interesting. And I'll tell you a trick with Vedic astrology is that a lot of people get married in their 20s. A lot
Hmm.
of people do. A lot of people have
Hmm.
babies in their 20s and 30s. But the
Hmm.
people who are struggling and get married later, it's actually a little bit of a benefit. And I'll tell you why. It's not because we're all going to have late marriages. I had a little bit of a later marriage too, but I will tell you that in Vedic astrology, it says if you get married, if you find your spouse in your teens and 20s, it's like when Venus is a very, very strong influencer during that time.
Yeah, planet of love.
Venus is sex, it's sexuality, it's,
Yeah.
desire, it's lust. And then you make your decisions based on lust and desire and like the huge sexual drive that people have in their teens and 20s. And then what
Hmm.
happens when you're 35 and 40? Oh, wait,
Yeah.
who is this person I married? Like,
Yeah. Plus
oh, she
also
was
add
really
like
hot.
societal pressures of like in your 20s, like, I remember at 16 and auntie was like, "Oh my God, you're going to be so beautiful. Like you're going to get married so quickly." And I was like, "Cool, let me
That's
finish high
really
school
weird.
first."
Yeah. That's
Like
like
I don't,
weird. And
it is a
and
weird.
like marriage should not be a benchmark. And I
Yeah,
really believe that like
preach.
yeah, like marriage should not be a benchmark of success. People have done crazy things in marriage, and that does not make them successful. What makes them successful is that can you hold yourself high when times are bad? And can you look at yourself in the mirror and say, I didn't F up? Like, I didn't F up. People have a lot of guilt, but
Yeah.
I really feel like when you reach the age of 36 and 37, what happens in charts is that the mature Saturn takes over and the lust goes down a little bit. Maybe not
Mm.
completely, but the lust goes down a little bit and you start being logical on like the choices you make. Is the marriage partner going to be good for me, for my
Yes.
career, for my family life, for my like weaknesses and my strengths? You look at the
Hmm.
person as a whole versus just an object to sleep with. So I think there's a lot of really good marriages I have seen. I think I've seen a lot of good marriages after the age of 35 or because Saturn matures that time and it makes you grow up and you're like, oh, I have more wisdom now. I'm not going to just marry the person I sleep with. I'm not going to be in love with anyone. Like I have morals and standards and values. And if it doesn't match to me, I'm not going to do that. I
Yeah.
would have done that in my 20s and teens, but not now. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of wisdom and people in the Vedic marriage, the perfect age to get married in Vedic culture is after 36. You pick a,
Wow.
and because,
Do y'all hear that,
and
ladies?
I know. And so don't
If
feel
if you're
afraid.
like, why I'm 30, I'm 34. So if you're like, why am I still not married? Like, hey, just next time auntie asks you, why aren't you married
Yeah.
yet? You let them know. According to, Vedic, what is it,
Scriptures. Yeah.
studies? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's more beneficial to be married after 36. So
Yeah.
I'm
And
just
if
following
you're
that. Shut that
exactly.
auntie
And
up.
it, I know, exactly. And like, people will be like, I don't know if you heard the word monlic, like if you're monlic, like you can't get
Yeah, you have
married
to
if
like
you're
marry a
monlic.
tree. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's so silly. But monlic pretty much means in like modern terms is that you had an earlier relationship and it totally fell apart. So most monlic people like will have the karmic relationship in their 20s and teens and had this like huge breakup and then they'll get married again and it'll be fine. The second marriage is usually better. So I feel like early years of life, the 20s and teens are not really the most favorable time to pick a spouse. It
Yeah.
just isn't. I mean,
Yeah, your
it's
frontal lobe hasn't like developed, or like maybe you're too afraid to like explore further, or like,
yeah,
at least I know I've seen like rom-coms or movies or whatever where it's like the girl's like, "I just need to go explore what else is out there. All I know is being in
exactly.
this relationship with you. Like I need to see if I can do things on my own." And they
Yeah.
break up with their like college boyfriend or their high school boyfriend or whatever. The guy's just like, "You just want to sleep around and you just want to do all this." And they're like, "Well, I just want to see what life is like when I'm not like attached to someone."
Right. And you
And
make
we
your own
laugh
decision.
at that, like that whole like, I mean,
The
it makes
whole
for whatever, it makes
scene.
for like entertaining TV or
Yeah.
entertaining, a movie, but like there's some
There's
validity to
definitely.
that.
Yeah.
There's also the
Exactly.
whole cases where like people have been together and then they break up and then they come back together later and things are just better because they know what mistakes they made the first time around and kind of like lived life and did other things, and then it's still like
Exactly.
if it still led them back to each other and they're like,
That's kind of
should we
nice,
try
right?
this again?
Yeah, yeah, and maybe they'll realize they're totally two different people. But I really do think that growth is really individualized, and you can't do it when you're with someone as
I
much.
love that.
That's
Yeah.
why marriage is,
So
if you think about
hard.
marriage, marriage is like 25% love. And in the
Mm.
Vedic scriptures, it's there's other aims of marriage. It's not about love. Like the rom-coms that you're seeing, like, oh, I would marry for love, and oh, I marry for I can't live without this person. Yeah, there's like a little bit of that, but
Yeah.
it's to do your dharma. It's to do your it's to, get yourself out there in the world. Marriage, people have it all wrong in the US. I mean, if you want to go down like the path of like Bollywood movies and like, rom-coms, I mean, they really ruin your mind. They're like, oh, I have to marry the love of my life and therefore blah, 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 I will be happy forever. No, marriage is a whole different thing. And, it's interesting because you could date someone for like many years, but if you marry the same person, it might be a terrible marriage, but a great boyfriend. Do you see?
Yeah.
Because in Vedic astrology, a boyfriend is in a separate area of a birth chart, and a marriage is in a separate area of a birth chart. So if I look at birth charts and I'm like, oh, wow, this person has terrible influences for a good marriage, I'm like, never get married, just live with your partner. Like, you don't need to sign the contract because if you sign the contract, it becomes like a volcanic eruption. Like, people
Wow.
who I've seen this play out. Like, you could be the best of friends, the best boyfriend. Oh, he was so romantic, so sweet, blah, blah, blah. Even the best girlfriend. The minute you tie the knot, it is freaking hell because it's two separate
Wow.
planets that get activated, two separate areas. So don't think that your boyfriend is going to make a good husband. Like, I mean, my story is different, but like, I think that you know, my people can have terrible relationships or terrible
Yeah.
boyfriends and dates and this and that, but don't think that's like going to influence and correlate to your marriage. It just
Yeah.
doesn't. It's a very separate thing in the birth chart. So you can have, that's why arranged marriages, it sounds weird. You might have like a boyfriend break up and then get married arranged. Let's say if
Arranged
you're a
marriage to
19,
someone else and it's
yeah, it's
great.
perfect. It's smooth. Yeah,
Yeah.
because your marriage indicator in your chart is very positive. So that's
Wow.
why you see like rags to riches stories. You see those stories of like these girls that like came from a really poor background, blah blah blah, and then they married like this rich guy and live a totally different life.
Yeah.
There's this is luck. This is
And it's
pure luck.
also what's my I'm trying to figure out how to word my question here. Have you found there's a correlation also between women have or men or women, I guess, any person who if you've seen their birth chart and it's like, hey, you should probably just like be lifelong partners with whoever you're,
Yes,
in love with, rather
yes.
than get married. Have you found a correlation to those people saying also that like, oh, perfect, I never really wanted to get married anyway. It's like my parents want me to
Hmm.
get married, or they're like, when are you going to marry your boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever? And it's like you've been together 7 years and you're living together, whatever. Have you seen that correlation?
I've seen people that, well, I've actually seen a lot of people that have been divorced, and I will look at their chart. I'm like, okay, do you want to be in a relationship? And I look at their divorce, and I'm like, oh, it's perfectly, makes sense. You got divorced. But people, and this is weird to say, but people who got divorced, the chances of them having another successful marriage, and this is really bad to say, is a little bit less because divorce is in the house of marriage. It's just permanently placed there in this lifetime. Or, so basically you can just choose to find a person and just not get married because
Interesting.
it's weird. Like, you could have a second and third marriage, but the same weird issues might come up, or like something might always make you unhappy in marriage. But if you never get married and you just have a relationship, for a year or two, that could work out better because your fifth house of love affairs in Vedic astrology is a fifth house, and a marriage house is seventh. And seventh house can be destroyed, but fifth house can be wonderful. So you could be a great lover, a great person to date, a
A
great
great
person
partner.
to love.
Just
But
general, yeah.
love and marriage are two separate things. And I know
Yeah.
there's more, relationships like before marriage require more love. Relationships after marriage, during marriage, it's a little bit of a mixed bag. There's a little bit of, there's a responsibility, to like have dharma, your
Yeah.
kama, your moksha, your
Yeah.
artha. There's other aims of life that kick off when you get married.
Yeah, I've heard from all my friends, even my friends that got married early, that like when I would especially somewhere between 25 and 30, I'd be like, "Ugh, I wish I was married." And they're like, "Marriage is hard." Like it's harder than you think. Like it's not all, rainbows and sunshine all the time. Just because you're married does not mean like you win, or
Right.
everything's going great by default, or even people be like, it's not like we're having sex all the time, kind of thing. They're just
Right.
like, no, it's hard. There's like so many other things that,
There's
like,
other things
once
they're
you have
focused
that
on.
title of, a husband or a wife, there's so much more that goes into that, whether it's pressure or status or
Yeah.
just working on the relationship itself, because it does, the nature of it changes.
Yeah. And usually it's interesting, and this is all Vedic astrology. Like the first 5 years of the marriage of a woman, it's hard. It's an adoption phase. It's a transition phase. You're not going to adopt the last name of your spouse right away inside your heart. You might do it on paper, but inside your heart, you're not going to be like, I'm like a Smith all of a sudden. You're going to be,
Yeah.
it's going to take you time to
It's gonna take
digest.
time for you
And
to, yeah, adjust and
so
be
there's a,
one with the family
mhm.
situation.
So there's a lot of like the transitions. The first 5 years are transitions. And after that, like people have to get practical because in the Vedic culture, marriage is about the four aims of life. It's about the dharma because people now can get married, they can focus on their work. Like, what
Yeah.
can they give to society again? The next thing is like the artha. Can you make money for your family to support your family? Then it's kama. You can also have the sex and pleasure. That's also part of it. And then there's moksha. Can you actually look at like life as um, a spiritual journey and actually get direction to have somewhat of a moksha state later on in life. So it's really interesting. The aims in your whole life just changes because it's forcing you when you have kids to start earning more money, to start getting very
Right.
practical. Like the duties and responsibility of a parent is very hard. And like, sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's hard, but it's a lot of work. So in
Uh,
marriage between two people, it's just work. It's work
isn't it
because,
considered a curse in Vedic astrology?
if you go deep in the scriptures, the reason why, and because look, when you have more attachment, you suffer more in the end.
Mm,
When you have 10 kids, you're going to suffer more in the end because you're like, oh, my butcha, my little
yep.
butcha, my baby, like you're
Yeah.
going to have a hard time releasing your, your like
Just that
desires and that,
attachment.
that
Yeah.
attachment. But when
Yeah.
you're single, or if
You
you
just have to worry
have
about yourself.
yeah, and there's not much attachment. You can leave the world freely. And
Yeah.
so, like, or if you're in a spiritual partnership and you don't have kids, then you can actually walk down the same path together spiritually. So there's a lot of reasons. And, Vedic astrology is very interesting because it's applicable to modern day. And no
Mhm.
one, these pundits in India, they don't explain it. Like these priests in the temple, they're like blah 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 with the mantra. They don't tell you this can really happen, like
I think this is your explanation is what I think people are missing. At least that's what I thought I was missing, especially once I heard you talk about Vedic astrology versus like my mom just telling me.
yeah,
And
it's
I'm like, but
different.
why this and why that? And she's like, that's just how
I
it
don't
is.
know. Right. And they're like,
That's
I don't
just
know. The
how it
priest
is.
told
Like,
me.
we didn't ask
Yeah.
these questions. Our parents
Right.
told us this, the
Yeah.
priest told us this, and we
Yeah.
just did it, and that's what it is, and that's what I
You
know, and that's what I'm passing down. And
and
I'm
that
like,
you're
but
dumbing down the religion. And the thing is, like, I had that every Indian family has that they're dumbing down. Oh, this ritual happened because blah blah blah. My great grandmother did it. Well, why did it happen?
right.
And then I started
Yeah.
asking questions. The same thing. You had the
Yeah.
curious mind just like me, and I was asking those questions. I go to the temple and I was like, okay, that does not make any sense what you just told me. So then we would argue about charts or mantras or like different rituals. I'm like, I know whatever you're doing is so generic. Like it
Yeah.
doesn't really apply to a marriage. Like how,
Mm,
it's interesting because when you dive deep, you can really know the answers of your existence, of why work is up and down, why money's up and down, why relationships are up and down. Vedic astrology really has remedies. If you have a problem, there's a solution.
right.
In Western astrology, it's different. Like in Vedic astrology, people can do mantras and they can wear gemstones and they can, do different activities like
Right.
donation on a certain
Yeah.
day or like something like that. Like you must have heard this from your mom, but like, or feed the cows or you do something like that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. For me, it was like a variation of like, say this sloka, say it 11 times, and say,
mhm.
all these other things. And
Yeah.
I did it as and when I could, and I still, and I also maintain usually like some of the spirituality or like religious of things. I'm like, as long as you do it with good intention, with the right mindset,
Hmm.
even if you're just doing your best and you're not like super on top of it, or at least
Yeah.
you tell me, like, is that
No,
okay?
you're
Or is
right.
it like,
Like I think your intention should be right. And what, I usually
yeah,
tell people when they do mantras, you should do the Ganesh one first because Ganesh will allow you to make mistakes in saying the mantra because people can't pronounce these Sanskrit words that easily. But if you pray to Ganesh first and then say the mantra, Ganesh
will help
like
like guide you
will
through
help.
it?
Well, how, also like will be like, okay, you made a mistake with that one word and that mantra because mantras have to be perfect, and that's how it works. It has to be extremely perfect and extremely like, pointed in a very perfect way with the right syllables and accentuations. But
Yeah,
so it's interesting. I mean, it's a fascinating science. Vedic astrology is a spiritual
yeah,
science, in my opinion, and Vedic astrology, I think, is the king of astrology because you can predict when you'll get married, when you'll have your kid, when you'll have a job promotion, when, oh, you have an issue in your job. Okay, we will figure it out. We'll
yeah,
fix it. And then we'll make sure you give you a timing on when it can work out. So
yeah,
there is a lot that you can
yeah.
do.
Can you tell us really quickly about how you got into Vedic astrology?
Yeah, I mean, it was my curious mind. I also had an uncle who predicted a lot of my life. And,
Okay.
it was funny because, like, marriage time period, you can meet your spouse at a very young age, but you don't have to tie the knot until later. So that was my situation. And, my uncle told me, oh, Julie's gonna, get married a little bit later. And I'm like, no, I'm not. Like, there's no way. Like, I'm just not going to. And I'm like, how
Yeah.
could you say that to me? And
Yeah.
I'm like, and then I
Sounds
was
like me to
like,
my mom.
and I'm like, that's not going to happen. I'm a hard, when I want something, I will look and get it, like
Yeah.
I would be very directed and very focused. And I moved to New York and, you know, it's funny. I tried and I did not succeed. And I tried again, I did not succeed. But it's funny. I mean, you can meet a ton of people and it just doesn't click or whatever. And I didn't feel bad. I'm like, okay, I tried. But the funny thing is, my marriage time period came, and that month later, I was engaged and married. Like I went to court, I got married to my friend that I knew for 7 years, who was my next door neighbor. Like he was right
I
next
love
to me
that.
the whole time. And I'm like, where is my
Where is
husband?
he? It's like, hello.
And he was like my best friend. And it's sometimes you need that growth to realize that the guy was under my nose the whole time. And I would call him after these stupid dates. Now I'll be
Yeah.
like, hey, let's go grab a, dinner, or let's go for a walk or whatever. And he was my little neighbor in New York. And like we grew with each other. And, he helped me out through good times and bad times. And it's just, it worked out. I had no idea. I didn't even look at him in that way for many years. And then one fine day when my marriage timing hit, bam, oh, wait, why do I think he's cute? Why do I like him? Those
Yeah.
feelings start coming. And it's because the timing was right,
Yeah.
and I mean, we got married very soon. So, I mean, it's interesting. Every story is very different, but
That's what makes
I
us
would,
unique.
yeah.
Like our stories are different.
Yeah, but it's nice. Like I feel like, you don't need to kind of think about when you'll get married because I feel like there's so many more things in life. It's just 1/12 of your life. Like marriage is there's 12 aspects of life in Vedic astrology, and marriage is only one of them. It's one
Hmm.
out of 12. There's many
Yeah.
other things to focus on. And it's amazing, but I can see, like, if you're interested in marriage, you should get married. And, most people do have multiple chances in life to get married. So it's not like,
Yeah.
he's the one, like, no, there's multiple chances. And, it just has to feel right in your gut.
Yeah. I also want that to be a great message to people of like, it's okay if you get married multiple times. Like,
Right.
and
Yeah.
also like the thing about divorce, like, you mentioned that like people who are divorced, like their second marriages or anything like that may not be as successful, but that doesn't mean it's not all the time, right?
Right. Because there's
It's
different
just,
indicators. But,
it's specific.
they could have a little bit of a better marriage because their first karma was broken and it's done and, depleted.
Right.
But the
Right.
second marriage might have the same issues until they get it fixed. And then the third marriage could be really successful because, hey, I
Yeah.
worked out my issues in my first two marriage.
But
Bingo.
that's exactly what it is. Like, did that person grow? Did they fix their issues?
Right.
Did they identify the issues and
Right.
fix it? Which I think is the more important thing is that, like, do they exhibit signs of growth? Which is, that's all, like, that's what I'm getting out of all of this is that, like,
Yes.
finally understanding that, like, I can't be fucking my life up
Right.
every single time. Like, there is no way I'm making all the wrong choices all the time. Especially if it's like I followed whatever my parents told me that I was supposed to do and things didn't go right. I followed my own gut and like things weren't going right. I followed the logic of things and things didn't go right. Like there is no way I can be doing everything in every direction in every way that seems right and it still not go my way. And that's what led me to be like, there's got to
Something.
be another reason for this, and maybe my mom had a point, and that's how, like, that's exactly what it
It's
is that like,
energy.
okay,
It's
how
like,
do I figure this out and then grow around this or grow with it, I guess, more so of like, okay, this is the period of this is happening, and if there's another period of something else happening, being like, okay, fine, like kind of like
yeah,
I yield almost, like it's out of my control when like nothing is necessarily within my control. I can just control myself and like what
yeah,
I'm able
your
to do
mind.
with what has been presented to me. Like,
But
it's like
people,
the hand
yeah.
that you're dealt.
But people also like you have lots of goals. You have lots of things you want to do in life. That's why,
Yeah.
having huge desires, huge goals, it's a double-edged sword. You want to get a lot done in your life,
Yeah.
but having huge desires can also mean that you're feeling unfulfilled. Now you can have big goals and people who like you are going to rise because people like you want to keep achieving, right? So it's a good thing in this time and day and age to like have big goals. But people who don't have big goals, they're kind of like, life is great. I go to
Yeah.
McDonald's, I have my milkshake, like whatever, I don't know, I'm
Yeah. The
making up
simple
stuff, but like,
things.
yeah, it's like simple things. But you want more in life. And I think that's
Yeah.
that's valid. And I think that's
Yeah.
it that also people struggle when they want more in life. And I think, that's okay because
It's
there's
like, it's
growth.
the whole thing about like having standards. Like, you're not like,
Mm.
I've seen a lot of reels where it's like, if I wanted to, I could be married tomorrow. Like, if I wanted to
Right.
make it happen, I could make it
Right.
happen.
Exactly.
Right. But it's
Same.
like, I have standards. There's certain things that I want. And so I'm going to make sure I'm going to get those things. And so, like,
No, exactly.
some people have to decide what price they want to pay. Like, do you want to be married like sooner? Because you can do that. It can
Yeah,
happen. You say
of
yes to an
course.
arranged marriage. You do like what, like, you can do it. But are
You
you,
would,
is that like,
is that what you
is that the
want?
bigger prize for you? Or is the prize like, okay, well, no, I'm going to wait for the right person at the right time when everything else feels right to me and then do it? Cause that's where I'm at, where I'm like,
Right.
well, no, I mean, I could be married tomorrow if I wanted to be, but
Exactly.
I don't want to just marry anybody. I want to be with someone that makes sense to me that, in whichever way that is, whether it's,
Yeah, no,
whether
exactly.
it is love or it is, finance, or not that I'm saying I'm going to marry for
Yeah,
money.
right.
There's reasons, right? We all have
There's
our,
reasons and you'll know. And like I think people know. And I think you'll
when yeah.
I mean, yeah, there's some of that too, but like I also feel like, that's so generic, but yeah, I mean, sometimes you just kind of know, but and I knew the people that I met earlier in my life were not the one. I just knew it. But you try to make something work out and you like
Yeah.
get all sad and confused. But
Yeah.
when you look back, it's that gut instinct of
Yeah.
like there's something off, there's something wrong. It's that gut
Yeah.
instinct. The woman's intuition is so strong and so powerful. And I really think if we tap into that instinct more, you will know your own answers because charts are meaningless. You know your own self more than anyone else.
Yes.
And if
Yes.
you can listen to your intuition, and meditation is to grow your intuition, but I feel like if
Yeah.
you do that, you will know. Like you can even sense when bad things are about to happen or good things are about to happen. Like you can feel it. A woman really has a lot of power to feel that. And I think, you seem like a pretty strong, that strong feminine energy in you to
Thank
really,
you.
it's good. Like, so you have to harness that more and make sense out of it more, and you
Yeah.
will
I try
figure out
really
your own
hard.
life.
I
No, and
I
I,
meditate daily, or at least I meditate daily, as in, the past couple of days, Shivratri really threw me off because then I was up late and then I slept in and then for 2 days I was just like, oh my God,
yeah,
what's going on with my sleep schedule? But yeah, so I didn't meditate those mornings. But yeah, and I can feel like I stepped into this year being like, this is going to be a good year.
that's
And
awesome.
just to like, if people don't know, insights. Like, I did lose my job, have to move. My lease is ending, and I've had my cars broken into twice in the building that I live in.
It's
And
horrible.
I'm just like, I need to leave this building, but now I can't because I don't have a job, because then I can't apply for a new
Yeah.
apartment. Da, 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 da. But I'm just like, okay, you know what? I'm going to extend this lease. I'm going to just roll with the punches here. And I still believe that this is going to be a good year. We're only a couple of
Isn't
months
that
in, right?
interesting? Isn't that
Yeah,
interesting? Like you feel that.
I feel that.
You
I'm like, it's going to
feel
be a good
that.
year. I think I'm going to meet my person this year. And maybe I will, maybe I won't.
Amazing. But
There
you
have been
feel
times where I'm
something
like, I think
good.
I'm going to meet, I'm going to do, this is going to happen. And it doesn't happen. I'm like, okay, well, why? And instead of beating myself up, I'm like, you know what? It just wasn't supposed to. Just
But
because
did you,
someone told me like, oh, you're going to meet your person in 3 weeks, and then I didn't.
yeah, but
Okay,
yeah, I think
instead of harping on it or like holding on to it and be like, why didn't it happen?
I
Okay, so
know. But when you went through that 7.5 year period, did you know that it was going to be rough? Like, did you feel it? Like, you can feel sometimes those energies just
yeah,
overpowering you, and you're
for
like,
the
oh, this is not a good time. You
yeah,
feel
for
that.
the first couple of years,
You
I
probably felt
didn't
it.
I didn't pay attention because I didn't care and I wasn't thinking about
Mm,
it. But eventually, then I was like, well, I can't be messing myself up all the time.
yeah,
You
right,
can only beat yourself down so much.
right,
Is how
exactly.
I kept seeing things. And even my mom would say, like, it's easier to just blame the planets. I'll stop blaming yourself. It's easier to just blame the stars. It's easier to just blame like the planets if that's what helps you look at it that way. And so
But
that's
it's
kind of how
also
it
how it's
started.
undesirable events, desirable people will come in in your life. It's not you. It's not you. It's the environment that
Yeah, it
you're
teaches you
in.
so many lessons though,
It's
like
an
about
Mhm.
just
It's an
everything. I
environment.
remember the first time I really like made a gut decision and I was like, whoa. Okay. Because I was like, logically, this makes no sense, but I want it so badly that I'm willing to
Yeah.
struggle, even if it's not a logically, like financially, logically, like it would be
Yeah.
smarter if I did this. But I'm like,
Right.
even though that one's a smarter move, this is a happier move. And
That's
maybe
amazing. But
through
you
a
did
level
it.
of struggle, but I think the end result will make me happier. And so I remember making that decision. And
And how
ironically
was
enough,
it?
speaking of like moving and stuff like that, it was a similar decision of like, well, do I move into this apartment that I can move into like immediately and they're willing to let me name my price because I needed
Wow.
to move into a new place? Or do I move into this other apartment that has all these other things that I really, really want? Location, people, like what, like
Mm.
gym, like pools, like
Awesome.
move into this really nice apartment, but I have to wait 3 weeks and I have to figure out an in between something to do. And that was the harder choice. But I was like, the apartment is pretty, the location is amazing, like all these other things will make me happier, even though I can just get
Just
the job
get the
done with
apartment.
this other
Yeah.
option. Like logically, I was like, that's what makes sense. But
In
my
your gut.
whole body was like, but you're
And
gonna hate that location.
you're
You're
right.
already not feeling so hot about that roommate, like with the story, like what.
Yeah.
So I made the gut decision, and ultimately, I like one of my best friends now. It was like one of the
Wow.
roommates, and
That's so cool.
and I had such a good time. So like, that was my first time making like a true gut decision, and I was like,
That's
it did not make
amazing.
any logical
But
sense, but
they never
okay,
do. They never make logical sense. And the thing is, but that's usually the right answer. Like, I mean, every time I did not listen to my gut, and it made no sense to like listen to my gut, and I did not listen to my gut, and I got in trouble. And it was just not the right move. And, like sometimes, your intuition plays such a powerful voice that if you don't listen to it, it might cause more drama. And yet, when you listen to yourself in that deep way, you can make choices that might be uncomfortable, but you're still going to be okay with it.
yeah,
Because you were okay with, okay, there's 3 weeks where there's like nothing going on. I have no
yeah,
place to live, but you're still going to be okay with it because you
yeah,
made that choice ultimately and you own
yeah,
it,
yeah.
and you're like, this is my thing.
Yeah, someone told me something that like I thought was so great. Every time they struggle or have like a challenge in their life, they're like, "Well, this is just going to be a great point in my TED Talk." And I'm like, "What a wonderful kind
So
of
true.
perspective because no one's
Oh,
TED Talk
yeah.
is like everything I wanted happened exactly how I wanted it and then everything's great, the
Yeah,
end. That's
exactly.
nobody's TED Talk.
No one, no one, no one.
Any TED Talk is about like, here's the adversity I faced, here are the challenges I faced, here are the things that happened to me, and here's how I persevered and came out the other side. And that's my
Exactly.
story, and that's
And
what
that's
like I'm here to
strength.
inspire other people. And I'm
And
like,
that's strength, yeah. It's
yeah,
strength.
and that is
It's
strength.
resilience. It's resilience. And it's, you just think of those stories when you look back at life. People remember those really hard stories
Yeah,
when they're, in their mid 80s and they talk about that struggle, but then they're like, yeah, but after that it was fine. So things always switch. I mean, even look at your parents' life. It was struggle when they first came to this country.
yes.
And then they're probably better now. And like, then they had kids and they had fun with their kids. And then they, next
I had to
phase of
figure
life.
that out with kids, like, you know, being the older daughter, being the first child also
Yeah.
is like, okay, well, school stuff, and then like,
Yeah.
you know, dance stuff, or you know, extracurricular stuff, and what is like, okay, what's the college application process, and
Yeah.
all of they were like, all
Yeah.
right, we got to
They're
understand
like
what this crap
they're
is.
learning too, right? And now when they become older, they have wisdom. They're not gonna like, they're like, oh, been there, done that,
Yeah,
and nothing's a big deal, but like it is a big deal initially. But struggle struggle makes like the stories. You're right. It makes the stories,
yes,
it makes your life kind of fulfilling because
yeah,
how would you be fulfilled without a struggle? You would just be
yeah,
like, oh, this is handed to me, and
yeah.
that's it.
I was just thinking about this morning how like I'm sure everyone at some point has been like, "Ugh, I wish I could just wake up one day and be in the life that I always wanted for myself."
I know.
But like the thing about that is that like you have no idea how, if even if that were to happen, even if that were something that were possible, you have no idea how you got there, and that victory wouldn't be the same thing.
Right.
It
Yeah.
wouldn't be a victory. It wouldn't be like I did all these things. All these things led up to this win, this life
Yeah.
that I have. And I talked about a book that I put on my Instagram actually, if you know, when people are hearing this. It's called The Midnight Library, and it's about a woman who just like not just willy-nilly wakes up in different timelines, but like she's like really sick and tired of her life the way that it is. And she thinks about, you know, ending her life, but then it takes her to a place where like someone's like, what if you had the opportunity to pick a different lifetime, which like whether you made, you know, X, Y, or Z different decision, and there's like, you know, A to Z, like there's a whole bunch of different little decisions that could change your life. And so she tries all of them out, and then even when she gets to the one lifetime that's like the closest thing that she's like, you know what, this is really nice. She starts to realize other little things that she's like, oh my God, in my original root life,
Yeah.
I was able to help this person or fix that situation or help, you know.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
then you know, spoiler alert, but the book ends up with her being like, oh my God, I actually have found an appreciation for the life that I do live. Because at the end of the day, even though this life is really nice, this other life is really
Hmm.
nice.
Hmm.
I don't even remember how I got here. Like, I don't remember falling in love with my husband. I don't remember having this kid, even though this kid is awesome. Like,
Just
I don't
like
remember this career
there's no
path.
gratefulness. Yeah.
Yeah, like I don't
Like,
know how
what is
I
it?
got
There's no
there.
meaning behind it. It's just like
Right.
it's beautiful things around you with no meaning. And it's funny, like in Vedic astrology, like if most people struggle in the beginning of their life, and then but some people who have good karma, and this is some, not everyone, but they
Mhm.
would have the good happen in the mid age of their life, where they have the most energy, they have the most time to devote, and having a good time period. It's called dasha in Vedic astrology. Having a
Mhm.
good
I'm here.
dasha, like
Yeah.
17 years, or like of 16 years or 18 years, or long periods of just good periods. It should be in your prime. It should not be when you're super old or super young.
Yeah.
So it's almost like, you know, you will see period that people that had great childhoods, and then they have them shitty ass period for like 20 years after that, and you're like, oh my God, that sucked. Then by the time
Yeah.
that happens, they're old and they're like, oh, I had a sliver of a really good period when I'm like 85 and then I'm dead, so it's like,
Yeah.
but so a lot of people, if people are lucky, luck is when you have a very good time period
Mhm.
allocated in your midlife where
Mhm.
you're like the most energetic and you can do the
Yeah.
most in your life and accomplish the most. So having an early childhood doesn't really nice early childhood. It's like great and everything, and like many articles have come out with it, like how you might succeed. But it's really your midlife. Your midlife is where you make an
You
impact.
also learn all those lessons also, and like
Yeah.
I feel like I remember when I turned 30 and I was like, cool, like if there's anything I learned, like I'm not as anxious anymore. I'm like, cool, things happen. I'm able to handle them. I don't care so much about
Yeah.
other people's
Like
opinions.
stupid things. Yeah.
Or yeah, I'm not so like as worried because for like
Hmm.
what I've seen, like I worried so much in my 20s, but then like things worked out. And so like yeah, sure, I can worry, I can be it's normal to be concerned about,
Yeah.
certain things in your life. But I'm like, at the end of the day, like things are gonna be fine. And so
Yeah.
I think only as you get older, right, you gain that wisdom and that knowledge of
And
like,
you're
cool,
like,
I lived these
yeah.
experiences which taught me
And
these
you're
certain
not
lessons,
fretting about
which
small
allow
things.
me to like go forth doing my best. And
Exactly. And focus on the
right.
things that
That's
matter. Yeah.
that growth and everything that we were talking about. Well, we are running out of time, or I guess we're like kind of over time technically. So I
We could
just
talk
wanted
about this
to,
forever.
yeah, I really can. But I just wanted to end on like a note about like, what is your best advice in terms of like a timeline, like there someone's divine timeline, and like if they're struggling, like what's your best advice that you can give someone in terms of like what's in their chart and then what they can do about it?
Like if you feel like you're going through a lot of bad things or like hard things, I would say focus on your mind because your mind is your ultimate tool. It can make you
Yeah.
happy in bad times. And how do you focus on your mind? There's meditation, there's pranayam, there's breathing exercises, there's yoga, there's exercise. Taking care of your body will can take care of your mind. And I
Yes.
think it's all connected. But I really feel like when you're going through bad things, you have to take care of yourself. And I mean, everyone knows that, but your mind is the most powerful tool. And the mantras, meditation, and just talking to other people and getting their perspective. I think that's so valid,
I
you
love
know?
that.
Like
Yeah.
talk to everyone, ask them questions like, oh, what is marriage like? Like get the real truth, the dirty truth behind everything. Like what is it like to live away from parents or whatever you want to,
Yeah.
whatever you want to do. Like ask a million people.
Yeah, don't gatekeep people.
No, no,
Don't
no.
gatekeep your experiences because we all need
Yeah,
to learn from each
yeah.
other. And, this is a perfect like circle back to like, yeah, that's why I talk about all the things that I have all these stories, I have all these anecdotes, I have all these experiences
No, it's
because,
amazing.
and
It's
I just want
amazing.
to tell people because I'm like, you're not alone. That's what this comes down to. That's what I'm trying to tell women that like, you're not alone in whatever struggle you're going through. And I feel like I've been repeating this to a lot of friends recently. I keep telling them like, you're not that special where you're the only one going through all
Right.
the things,
Everyone,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah. But
Like
it's
we're all going
amazing.
through a variety of all the
Right.
things, whatever that means to us. And so like if we talk to each other and we're there for each other, that's what like humanity is, right? And that support.
Exactly. You're an old soul, and I love that.
I accept that. I
Yeah,
accept
I
that.
I love that. I love that. And people will love you too, trust me. It's just, yeah, if they don't already.
Thank you, Julie, so much for all this insight. And we could talk forever. And this was just amazing. Before I let you go, read out of this book. I received it as a gift and I thought it was really appropriate. And I want to actually end every episode with this empowering mantras for awesome women. It just says, what is your superpower? And empowered women empower women, which I think is really great because this is exactly what I'm trying to do is empower women, and hopefully through astrology something great will happen and women will feel more empowered to understand the direction that their life is headed in and that it's not all in their control, and that's okay, and everything's going to be okay. But thank you all for joining us in this journey. Stick around and check out some extra bonus content on my Instagram page where Julie and I actually go into my personal Vedic chart and she tells me a little bit more about that. Thanks, y'all.